What is up, hackers? Welcome back to another episode of Hack Crypto, where we hack all of our crypto and Web3 education. If you guys are brand new here, be sure to be subscribed with notifications on if you like everything that is Bitcoin and crypto. Now, in this episode, I'm going to be unpacking the historic emails that just dropped between early collaborators and Satoshi Nakamoto themselves. I don't think it's a single person. A lot of people think it's a single person, but ultimately there is no good that comes of revealing the identity of Satoshi. But these emails are a bombshell. A lot of people have been talking about them, and as an early Bitcoiner in 2013, I was obsessed with the economics around it and the game theory around it and just the beauty of the white paper itself. So on this episode, I'm going to unpack some of the key findings. There's a lot of email correspondence that just got released because there's a really important court case going on in the UK this year in 2024 against Craig Wright, the fraudster that's kind of always been in the area saying that he was Satoshi, and he's trying to always prove it in court, which is just the complete opposite of how Satoshi would be wanting to do it. And I think that this is such a great way of basically just debunking him entirely, is showing all the early correspondence. And there's been so much cool analysis of the timeline that Jameson Lopp put together, where he's time framing exact deployments on the code and the communication with all of the email threads and everything. So in this video, I'm going to go through the email findings. Some of the craziest findings, I think, are that Satoshi liked jalapeno and pineapple on their pizza, which is pretty awesome, and some crazy numbers that he's throwing around. One of the key takeaways that I saw was they estimated, whoever this entity is, Satoshi, they estimated that it could be 100,000 nodes at one point. At the time of recording this, there's about 50,000 roughly Bitcoin nodes out there. So estimating 100,000 is a lot. At those early days when there was just a couple of nodes running 24/7 on PCs, processing transactions on the proof of work network. So a lot of incredible insights early days here, where they're sending 10,000 Bitcoin back and forth and talking about it. And just the donations that were happening were really interesting in the email I was reading through. And I'll go into that a little bit as to the guy who's emailing with him that I'll talk about. Sirius is his username, is basically trying to start a exchange, like a Bitcoin market is I think what it was called. And he talks a little bit about how he can do this. And Satoshi says, like, we can get funding for this easily. And he actually gets $3,600 donated. So there's a lot of theories around, was it Satoshi that gave Sirius this donation, the $3,600 to start this exchange? But he very explicitly said, I don't want anything to do with this exchange, that it's just a project on top of the network. And it's so cool to see all of this and how Satoshi thought about what the future could look like. A lot of concerns around the legal scrutiny of different use cases for the blockchain, which have played out. A lot of issues around the energy consumption, but Satoshi mentions that it will consume less than the financial system currently does, which is eloquently said. And a lot of the energy going into Bitcoin mining is renewable at this stage. So it was a really great insight from them. And then, of course, jalapeno on pizza, a lot of the really cool early days of their transacting back and forth talking about donations was quite interesting. So on this video, I'm going to jump onto the actual thread, the source that I will link below so you guys can check it out yourselves, see the thread that is in the court case right now. And I'll show you guys the correspondence because it's really cool. This is historic that these came out. And I think that it's so important that they came out now to just kind of get it in the court system, get this kind of just put to rest with this Craig Wright guy, because he's just been suing people that are saying terrible things about him and just really crazy behavior. So it's cool to see this sort of come out once and for all. And let's dive onto the email thread. All right, so this is from Pete Rizzo on Twitter. Shout out to him for doing this, from Bitcoin Magazine. I believe he is a editor there. So amazing work on putting this together. So when asked about Bitcoin and how it'll scale, Satoshi theorized that it'll have a maximum one day of 100,000 nodes. So this is a quick calculation. You guys can pause this video and look at all of the copy here, and also the link is below so you guys can read it yourself. But you can see if they pay 1 or 2 cents in transaction fees, they pay for themselves. I've coded it so you can pay any optimal amount of transaction fees you want. When the incentive subsidy eventually tapers off, it may be necessary to put a market-determined transaction fee on your transactions to make sure the nodes process them promptly. So that is really fascinating that he didn't really see that the price skyrocketing of each Bitcoin and transaction fees being sort of tied together. It looks like there was some kind of early day conversation around being able to customize the amount of transaction fees. So that is something that Ethereum really has done quite well in my experience. But interesting to see the conversation around 50,000 nodes that run today versus 100,000 that he said would be the max, or they said, Satoshi. Satoshi believed Bitcoin mining would be less energy intensive than the legacy banking system. This is their quote. So, ironic if we end up having to choose between economic liberty and conservation. Unfortunately, proof of work is the only solution I found to make P2P eCash work without a trusted third party. Even if I wasn't using it secondarily as a way to allocate the initial distribution of currency, proof of work is fundamental to coordinating the network and preventing double spending. Beautifully articulated here in that first sentence. Ironic if we end up having to choose between economic liberty and conservation. Just awesome. Just really vision driven. And it's just really eloquently written. Satoshi foresaw at least one viable non-monetary use for Bitcoin, backing the timestamping use case. You can see it's a distributed secure timestamp server for transactions, was what they were saying. Satoshi describing the difference between Bitcoin and DigiCash, David Chaum's failed e-money. It's similar in that it uses digital signatures for coins, but different in the approach to privacy and preventing double spending. This has been theorized many times over by people, and it's cool to actually get a confirmation that this was the intention, double spending being a key functionality versus DigiCash. Satoshi was concerned about legal risk of launching Bitcoin. Nothing he was uncomfortable with explicitly labeling it as an investment. So really, really interesting to see someone came up with the word cryptocurrency. Maybe it's a word we should use when describing Bitcoin. Do you like it? I love that last question. And it's so interesting to see like the brainstorm in the early days. By July 2009, Satoshi was tired, saying he needed a break from Bitcoin. He also explained how's absent from the work. So this is the handoff. This is a lot of people have talked about this many times over, and it's cool to see him mention how. I know this sounds really blank, but I still haven't been able to get the SourceForge login page to load, so I haven't been able to read it either. Hal isn't currently actively involved. He helped me a lot defending the design of the cryptography list. And with initial testing, when it was first released, he carried this torch years ago with his reusable proof of work, RPOW. I'm not going to be much help right now either. Pretty busy with work and need a break from it after 18 months of development. It would help if there was something for people to use it for. We need an application to bootstrap it. Any ideas? Just really cool. I think that this opens up so many doors here of people theorizing that this was actually Hal handing it off. And I think there's so much to unpack in that one email. Satoshi discussing how Bitcoin might gain adoption, very different from how we think of Bitcoin today. People would obviously be skeptical at first that the backing will hold up against an onslaught of people trying to get the free money. But as the competition raises the proof of work difficulty, it should become clear that Bitcoin stays scarce. People will see that they can't just get all the Bitcoins they want. It will establish a minimum value under Bitcoins, enabling them to be used for other purposes. If hopefully other purposes are waiting for someone to use. Really well said. In June 2010, someone offered to donate $2,000 to Satoshi for his work. Notably, he had the donor send it to Marty's address. This is serious. Marty is the collaborator that he was emailing with this entire time. I got a donation offer for 2,000 USD. I need to get your postal mailing address to have him send it to. So this was the really cool early ways of bypassing people knowing where Satoshi was or what the even remote location of their party was. So this just keeps going on and on. You can see Satoshi worked on Christmas Day. Satoshi saw Bitcoin taking hold as a way to trade other currencies on the internet, like Liberty Reserve. Liberty was shut down by the US, as an important note there. Satoshi had a mysterious leave of absence in 2010. Here he's talking about it with Marty, aka Sirius, though it is notable also in short details. It was removed who the language was anonymous from bitcoin.org. He worried Bitcoin sounded shady. Worth noting, given the historical revisions around this, Satoshi thought very highly of Gavin Andreessen. Very, very cool to see that shout out there. We finally have a copy of Satoshi email sent to other developers. Very cool. So this is the mind if I add you to the project developers list on the contact page. So basically sidestepping. Satoshi sidestepped completely away from being involved in the project, trying to get others to take use of it and credibility for it. So really awesome, historic emails, and definitely check these out, guys, and read them. That is it for this really exciting review of the historic email threads with early contributors in Satoshi. Adam Back is another person that was communicating directly with him or in the early days, or them in the early days. We don't know who Satoshi is. And once again, no good comes from identifying who Satoshi was. And a lot of people, including myself, believe that it was Hal Finney. And that is just a thing that's put to rest because he's passed away from ALS many years ago. So there is a lot of theories around this, but these documents are going to be studied by millions of people over the next decades to come, because it shows the timeline and the type of personality that this individual or this group had that was creating the Bitcoin project in the early days. And just casual 10,000 Bitcoin transactions are really exciting. But the donor piece is quite fascinating to me, figuring out what the rationale there was. Not wanting to be involved in a Bitcoin exchange, but doing the donation for it is truly interesting to think about. And just the legal implications and scrutiny that Satoshi talks about in those email threads for different use cases of the blockchain technology, which I think is really interesting. And also, lastly, didn't want it labeled as an investment. And I think that this is such a cool takeaway for everybody watching this, is that labeling something as an investment gets into the crosshairs of legal issues. And we've talked about it many times on the channel here, and every YouTuber talks about not financial advice. And this is a great example of the foresight that Satoshi had, was just don't think of this as an investment. And I think there's some beauty to all of these email threads. So once again, the links will be in the description below, so you guys can check it out, see what the communication with the legend Satoshi themselves was. And that is it for this video. Slap a like if you liked Bitcoin and just like this video. Be subscribed with notifications on for the next banger video. And I will see you here on the next episode of Hack Crypto.